Is your cheap $100 audio interface holding you back? Or are these $1,000 interfaces just burning a hole in your pocket? Today, we're settling the debate on cheap versus expensive interfaces. Stick around to find out if you're compromising on quality or if you've been fooled by the marketing hype. But before we get started, let me know in the comments, what interface are you currently using? And are you happy with it? All right, let's jump in. If you've spent any time in audio forums or music gear shops, you've probably heard the debate, are expensive audio interfaces really worth it? Well, I've been testing both cheap and high-end interfaces for years, and today I'll share what I've learned, and we'll look at the latest interfaces from one of the most popular companies out there, Universal Audio. I've got the budget-friendly Volt 2 and the high-end Apollo X Gen 2 series. Yes, this is the brand new version of their premium interface with some cool new features that you might like. The Volt 2 comes in at under $200, and the Apollo X Gen 2 interfaces start at around $1,200 and go up from there. This is the desktop version of the Apollo Gen 2. I have the rack version as well behind me there. We'll talk about price later. Now, you might be thinking the expensive audio interfaces must sound way better, right? Well, hold on, because this might surprise you. In many cases, the difference in sound quality between a budget interface like the Volt 2 and a $1,000 interface like the Apollo X Gen 2 is less dramatic than you might think. Let's take a listen. I get so lost sometimes. Days pass and this emptiness fills my heart. I get so lost sometimes. Days pass and this emptiness fills my heart. When I want to run away, I drive off in my car. But whichever way I go, I come back to the place you are. The difference is hard to hear, right? Now, both the Volt 2 and the Apollo X Gen 2 have high quality 24-bit 192 kilohertz conversion. The Volt 2 has a respectable dynamic range of 112 decibels and total harmonic distortion of negative 103 decibels. The Apollo X Gen 2 has even better specs, of course, 192 decibels of dynamic range and negative 120 harmonic distortion. If you go for the rack mount units of the Apollos, those numbers improve even more. But for many home producers, the difference may not be that noticeable. But wait a sec, what do these numbers really mean? Well, a better dynamic range really means that the interface captures a wider range of sound, volume levels, and this helps reduce distortion and can help bring out details in your sound. I will say, I've recorded with budget interfaces for years and I've been pretty happy with the sound results. But before you go running off to buy the cheapest interface you can find, there's more to the story. While the core sound quality might be similar, there are some areas where expensive interfaces can shine. First, the preamps are better on more expensive interfaces, and the Apollo X features unison preamp technology, which can emulate classic hardware preamps. Now, depending on the type of recording you're doing, this added flavor might be really nice. For example, some people just love the sound of Neve preamps, and the Apollo interfaces can emulate that sound while you're recording in. And all my instincts, they return in the grand facade, so soon will burn. Second, the Apollo X Gen 2 interfaces, like most premium interfaces, have better dynamic range, giving you more headroom for loud sources. Third, and this is a big one, analog to digital conversion. The Apollo X Gen 2 has what Universal Audio says are their best converter specs of any Apollo to date. And they've improved the sound of playback, so what you're hearing on your speakers and through your headphones is better. Now, when you're mixing, this could make a big difference. And where I've heard the biggest difference is when I use headphones. Some headphones, like the popular Beyerdynamic 250 ohm headphones, need strong, clear sound output for you to hear them well. A premium interface like the Apollo will give that to you. I will say that for everyday mixing on studio monitors, I've been satisfied with either of these. Now, the feature set is where things get really interesting. And hey, I want to give a shout out to Guitar Center. They've got a huge selection of audio interfaces, including the universal audio ones I'm showing you in this video. And you can always check their website or a Guitar Center near you to find the latest deals for any of your studio needs. I'll add links to Guitar Center below the video. All right, let's talk about the features. First, inputs and outputs. This is a big one for me and probably for anyone who has a studio that keeps expanding. The new Apollo series has models with up to 16 inputs and outputs. Now, compare that to the Volt 2's 2 inputs in the front. Of course, you can get budget interfaces with more ins and outs. The Volt models come with up to 4 inputs and 4 outputs. But man, I really enjoy the extra ins and outs on bigger interfaces. If you have a band, this makes sense. You can record everyone at one time. I've also enjoyed having the ins and outs for all my outboard gear like synths and processors. Next, latency. The Apollo X Gen 2 uses Thunderbolt connectivity that has super low latency. And this makes a big difference when recording and monitoring in real time. The more efficient an audio interface can be, the more flexibility it gives you. So you can be recording in with effects, playing back the music from your DAW, and you can still keep in time to the music. Third, onboard processing. The Apollo X includes built-in UAD DSP for running UAD plugins with that super low latency. Now, Universal Audio isn't the only premium interface with onboard DSP. You'll find it on interfaces from Apogee, Antelope, and others. But Universal Audio certainly has the biggest collection of plugins to take advantage of this. So this onboard DSP basically means that you can use the computer processing power inside these interfaces instead of using your computer's processing. Now, we need to talk about DSP versus native plugins, and I want to know what you think about this change too. In the past, one of the biggest draws of owning an Apollo interface was the ability to run the high-quality Universal Audio plugins. In fact, you couldn't even use their plugins without an Apollo interface. Until recently, when they started releasing native versions of the plugins. And what native means is that you can run the same plugins without even owning an Apollo interface. Computers are powerful enough now that for most projects, we can run all the plugins we want, or we have some workarounds to be able to do so. What do you think? Do you really still want the DSP features on these interfaces, or is this a thing of the past? Comment below on your opinion. The next benefit is a big one that you may not realize yet. Expandability. The Apollo X, like other premium interfaces, can be expanded with additional Apollo interfaces or even through the optical connections with other interfaces that have this optical feature. This means you can combine multiple interfaces and have more ins and outs and even more DSP processing power. And keep in mind, optical expansion doesn't mean that you have to get another Apollo. You can connect a cheaper interface to add more inputs and outputs as long as you've got that optical connector. Okay, now there's another step up with the Gen 2 Apollo, some features not available on the previous. First up is auto gain. Auto gain listens to your incoming audio signal and sets the gain level just right to give you a strong signal without distortion. This is a useful feature, but of course you can just set it manually as well. Some budget interfaces these days are adding this feature too, so if you really want it, you can watch my roundup of budget interfaces to see which ones come with this auto gain feature. I'll link it over here. So the new Apollos also have bass management. Bass management allows you to set a crossover point for your speakers and subwoofer. This means you can filter out all the low frequencies from your main speakers and send them to your sub. This results in a much cleaner, more balanced sound. This is especially useful if you're using smaller near-field monitors that might struggle with lower frequencies. The other new feature they've added is integration with monitor correction software from SonarWorks. The Apollo X Gen 2 can apply monitor correction and headphone correction in real time. This means you're hearing a much more accurate representation of your mix. You use the SonarWorks Sound ID software to create a profile of your room using the measurement microphone. Once you've got that profile, you can send it directly to Apollo's console where it's applied to your monitor outs in real time. The cool thing is, this correction is happening on the Apollo's DSP, not on your computer. This means you can close the Sound ID software and still have the correction running without eating up your computer's resources. But it gets even better. You can apply correction to both your main outputs and the headphones simultaneously. So if you're switching between monitors and headphones during a session, you're always hearing an accurate representation of your mix. Now, you will need a license from SonarWorks to use this feature. By the way, this SonarWorks integration works with Gen 1 Apollo X's as well. So can you still get this result with a budget interface? Yes, you can purchase monitor correction software, but you're getting a bit better experience with the premium Apollo. Okay, so the feature set on a budget interface sounds pretty basic in comparison to this stuff, right? These budget interfaces really focus on just recording sounds and listening to your music. The Volt 2 does have a vintage button, which gives you the sound of their vintage preamp, the 610. It's nice to have in this small package. I get so lost sometimes. I get so lost sometimes. If you upgrade to the 76 models of Volt, they also have a built-in compressor, which I think is even more useful if you're doing voiceovers or even a podcast. Now hold up. In the grand scheme of things, your audio interface is just one piece of the puzzle. There are some factors that may have a bigger impact on your sound. First is room acoustics. A well-treated room will improve your recordings more than any interface upgrade. You'll hear your music more accurately, which helps mixing, and could even have less sound reflections, which will give you cleaner sound going in. Another thing that will help audio going in is microphone quality. A different microphone may outshine interface differences any day. And remember that your own skills play a big part as well. No interface is going to improve a bad performance, and improving your mixing skills is key as well. So before you drop a ton of cash on an expensive interface, consider whether that money might be better spent elsewhere in your signal chain or on improving your own skills. Now, I'm not saying that expensive interfaces are never worth it. There are definitely situations where investing in high-end gear like the Apollo X is a must. Professional studios, obviously. When clients are paying top dollar, they expect top-notch gear, and you'll probably have more opportunities to use the added features and the sound quality. But for many of us, a well-chosen budget interface like the Volt 2 will just get the job done. So how do you decide which one is right for you? First, assess your needs. How many inputs do you actually use? Do you need MIDI? By the way, the Volt 2 has MIDI ins and outs, and the 2 inputs is probably enough for most people. Second, consider your budget. Remember, there are other important pieces of gear to invest in as well. Third, think long term. Will your needs change in the future? A premium interface gives you room to grow, more inputs, better quality, but it's a long-term investment. If you're just starting out or working on a tight budget, a good quality, inexpensive interface like the Volt 2 will serve you well. Focus on developing your skills and creating great music. The differences in high-end gear won't make or break your tracks. However, if you're upgrading your studio, expanding it with more instruments or a band, then investing in a higher-end interface like the Apollo X could be worth it. At the end of the day, it's not about having the most expensive gear, it's about making music that moves people. A $200 Volt 2 in the hands of a skilled engineer will always outperform anything else on the market. So, are you team budget or team high end? Let me know in the comments below. And if you found this video useful, give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing for more audio gear insights. Thanks for watching and keep making the music you love. I'll see you in the next video.